Yo people, this is Cootadude and today we are playing Bildungsroman, Murders in the Sanatorium by Improv. This is a murder mystery visual novel and a submission to the feedback quest. So let's start a new game and see how this goes. So you hear footsteps on the snow. We enter the room. That door sounded nice. Okay. Tuesday, May 1st, 1906. Alright. Let's quick save. How long is this bell gonna ring? Please stop. Okay, there we go. For the first time since my stay here, I did not expect I would wake up in my bed. Where did we expect to wake up? The coffin? The grave? Since this is about murders? I just stuffed the thermometer in my mouth and slid open the curtains, allowing the newly formed fleece-like snow glare into my room. Thermometer? So I'm checking my temperature while looking at the snowscape of mountains. I try to remember my discontinuous existence of the previous night. What happened last night? I don't know. I could barely recall the Walpurgisnacht party. Is that German? I don't know. What I almost forgot was my lighting of the fireplace, the swilling of the wine, and my running down with the labyrinth. My 1,000-year-long journey through hell, heaven, and back. Each step undoing the memories created by the previous. Each leap conjuring a brand new tier of the afterlife on top of the recently demolished layer. And yet, there was at least one sensation which I could recall clear as day. One which had sent both a major flush up to my face, and a sudden shiver down through my spine. Oh no. Emilia might actually kill me this time. I shuddered once more. None of us were fully aware of the truth or dare game we played. That doesn't sound good. Yet I could still recall. What? Okay. As I continued to wash all the evidence off my face, there was a knock on my door. Ah! Sister Justine! I waved back to her. But the usually kind and overworked Sister Justine was not in the mood for greetings. She opened her mouth, paused to let herself collect her thoughts, then spoke. If you don't mind, we could really use your help. There's been an incident in here at Professor Leon Kaufman's office. What type? An incident? Or an accident? We're not sure. I think it's a murder. He wasn't in bed when we looked into his bedroom this morning. We then went to his office, but his door is locked. We tried to knock and call out to him, but there was no answer, because he's dead. This most definitely was a concern. But why choose me? Because I'm a detective and I'm the player. I started staying here only a couple days ago. There are other patients closer to Herr Kaufmann who are better suited to helping him. Because we are expecting the worst, and you have the least emotional attachment to him. The worst? You'll know what I mean. Please come. Very well. Up the stairs, I followed Sister Justine up the steps to the next floor above, floor 4. This floor suited one room. Leon Kaufmann's rotunda office. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The entrance to his room began as the steps met his locked door. Dr. Adinyar was crouching by the door. Meanwhile, another nurse, Sister Juliet, Sister Justine's twin, identical twin, was leaning over on the railing, her fingers balancing a cigarette, her lungs filling the stairwell with her stress relief. Good morning here, Doctor. I called out to the white coat kneeling beside the door. He turned to look at me. Good morning, old chap. How's your rest so far? Going smoothly, I hope? Sorry there's been a hiccup like this along the way, but you'll get over it soon enough. After all, this is a sanatorium, and the horizontals here have already gotten used to the occasional departures. Departures? Ah, that's right, departures. Sister Justine told me you are expecting the worst. Well, we're not wishing any ill will towards him or any patients here. Really, no, not at all. It's just that we should expect in a place like this. It's just something we should... It's just what... Oh, yeah. But there could all be other reasons for his unresponsiveness. Yes. It's possible the poor old chum had a little too much to drink from the party last night. I think not. The worst case is, well, he's 70 years old. Might have been old age or a heart attack. Not consumption? If it was consumption, I would have noticed the signs during his last checkup. But he looked as healthy as a horse. An old winning racehorse, that is. But it ain't called for you to determine if our old friend is alive, no? That's the doctor's task. I was just wondering if you somehow have something, or at least could do or suggest something to help us unlock this door. After all, you looked cunning enough for a lad. Okay. Ignoring the compliment, I leaned and peered through the keyhole. And saw white. Without hesitation, the doctor continued. Strangely enough, none of the nurses here have a key to this room. Only our hair professor has the key, so there's no easy way of getting in. I know, that's not what I'm concerned with. Looked through the hole and saw a good portion of the room. Most of the rotunda walls are covered with tall windows which could slide open vertically, letting the newly fallen snow shine the entire office. However, that wasn't what interested me. Out of the rightmost corner of the keyhole I saw a large desk supporting a dark figure, the slouched-over professor. I could only assume he was facing down, for I could see the tip of his balding white forehead, as well as his fingertips dangling off the front of his desk. I stood up. You might be right here, Doctor. Either he is very drunk, unconscious, or, in the worst-case scenario, had suffered a heart attack. Then I told my proposition. I suggest you break the door down. The doctor scratched the back of his head. Is there any other way aside from damaging property? I shook my head. If he's not dead, we should act as fast as possible. Get someone or something to break the door, that is my suggestion. The doctor nodded and turned to Sister Juliet. Sister Juliet! The doctor snapped the cold nurse out of her trance. Go get little Friedrich Waldenstein from the chalet. She wasn't happy. Sister Juliet, with a roll of her eyes, stepped sluggishly down the stairs. And I don't want to see you slacking off, do you hear? Excuse me for 1 second. As her steps pattered down, another pair of steps scrambled up. It was Emilia Balsamo and Princess Anastasia Konstantina von Lepke. The little Russian was a student of Pierre Kaufman. They likely noticed Dr. Adenauer's panicked voice coming from Leon Kaufman's office. What happened, Augustine? What happened? Is Professor Kaufman all right? Good morning, Princess Anastasia, Konstantina, and Emilia. I don't know how to break this to you two. But Dr. Adenauer and I believe there's something wrong with Pierre Kaufman. Either he was drunk or he had a heart attack. She shook her head in response, a frozen realization in her eyes. I don't believe he is drunk. He told me he quit drinking 5 months ago. She ran to the door and banged and called out his name. Professor Kaufman, it's me, Professor, it's me. Your most prized student, Anastasia. Please tell me you are okay. Just then Emilia capped the panicked noblewoman's mouth as she dragged her away from the door, both struggling in the process. Emilia turned to us with an awkward smile. My apologies. Emilia whispered in a soothing voice to her friend. The little Russian then took a breath and turned to Sisters Justine and me. I'm truly sorry for my disturbance. As a noblewoman, my actions were improper. She stared at the ground for a while. Then she continued. Here, Professor Kaufman was one of the few friends who saved my life. He was so full of life, too, despite his age. I'd never have expected anything like that to come so soon. If assuming, of course, what happened has happened. Like how Emilia and Anastasia Konstantina heard Dr. Edinar's yelling. 3 other patients dashed up the steps after they heard Anastasia Konstantina's shouting. 3 of them. These 3 were Cecil Rhodes Smith, Joseph Patterson Roosevelt, and Celine Riberolis. Cecil, too, was Herr Kaufman's student. What happened? Is Professor Kaufman alright? Augustine, what are you doing here? Yeah, what's going on? Good morning, Cecil. Good morning, Joseph. Hello, Celine. I don't know how to say this, but I think there's something wrong with Herr Kaufman. And like what the little princess did, Cecil called out the professor's name and banged on the door. Professor Kaufman, are you alright? It's me, Cecil. Suddenly, Dr. Edenair shoved past us. He pushed Cecil away from the door and slapped him hard across the side of his face. Be a man and behave yourself. Just then, Anastasia Konstantina rushed to Cecil's side. Cecil, are you okay? She gently rubbed his cheek, calming him down. Yeah, I'm alright, thank you, Anastasia. Meanwhile, the doctor continued his scolding. I did not expect everybody here, and it is not apparent no patient in this sanatorium behaves in a dignified manner. However, I believe every one of you still has at least some sort of human dignity left in your noggin. Once we break open this door, whatsoever happens, I want each and every one of you to promise me that you will be calm. Oh look, here comes little Frederick. Frederick Waldenstein finally appeared with his childlike smile next to Sister Juliet. He barely seemed aware of the chaotic situation. Despite his illness, he had a large blacksmith's build, so he looked strong enough to tear out almost anything. And that was what he did. The doors opened. Everybody stand back. Okay, little Frederick. I want you to wrap your right hand around this knob here. Good. Now, on a count of 3, pull your right arm back as hard as you can. Ready? 1, 2... With great strength and little issue, he pulled out the doorknob along with its screws and splinters. Afterwards, we stepped around the remnants of the door and slowly filed into the room. And yet, we all failed our promises, because we see a dead man who was murdered. For what we saw was a scene we almost failed to expect. There was stillness, not the stillness of breathing unconscious person, but of a clearly breathless, indifferent object. An object whose late intellect had taught us last week about the immortalities of past martyrs and present consumptives. But I did not think he would expect to die from immortalized like this. For his death was caused not by heart attack or his disease, but by murder. With his body slumped over his desk, I could see the handle of the dagger jutting out from his back. Whoever killed him left in haste? Maybe. Oh, that's screwing that. Emilia comforted the noblewoman then and there and let her sit down on a chair in the room. The room itself was shaped like a rotunda and furnishes expected of a respectable philosopher. History and mathematic books and East Asian and Egyptian artifacts littered the shelves. More piles of books were stacked at a grabbing distance from each side of the intellectual's leather desk chair. the chair itself having a lovely worn-out, short backrest. I gently approached the body as it peered out the window behind him. The window revealed the steep, snow-covered sanatorium rooftop. So bright, we can't see anything. Without realizing I stepped on something fragile, glass. My foot cracked the remnants of a broken teacup. Glass cup. I then tried to balance myself on the windowsill as I removed the ceramic piece from my shoe. My palm touched something wet. Tea. I pulled my hand away. I stepped back and tried to process his body from head to toe. With the professor's body having slumped on his desk, and with the leather throne having stood in front of the westernmost rotunda, the room lent itself a peculiar light. Instead of a murder of an intellectual, it was the death of a king. The decadence of a nation, the burning of a library. It's a lot of things. But just as I was only able to process half of what was in front of me, I heard a voice muttering from center of the room. Leave. What? I said get out! Scram, all of you! Instead of shock, Dr. Adinal was furious, his face reddening. Get out! Leave! Everyone, go take your breakfast. And you? What are you doing? Close the window and take your notes elsewhere. Celine let the window slam down and placed her notepad away. With silence, everyone started to leave. But just as they turned away, the doctor tapped me on the shoulder. Except for you. And you, little Friedrich, you too. I need both of you to carry his body down to the morgue. Also, Sister Joliet and Sister Justine can both go pick up the stretcher from the basement. Thank you. What happened between then and breakfast was a blur. I was still processing my realization that a human had murdered one of the sanatorium's most respected patients. What I could recall was that both Friedrich and I avoided touching the dagger while placing his body face down on the gurney. It was a chore getting his body down. Neither Dr. Adinyar nor Sister Joliet knew how to operate the elevators. Because Friedrich was much taller than me, I also had to plan every step he and I took. Both the shock of the murder and the carrying of the body were mentally taxing. I was sure I made some dents in the staircase walls. Once I arrived in the cafeteria, Sister Justine and Cecil were still preparing the breakfast. Unlike Anastasia Constantina, Cecil let out his emotions long after he saw his mentor's body. I sat at my assigned table with Celine, Joseph, and Friedrich. The next table over sat Anastasia Constantina and Emilia, grasping the princess's hand to console her. Cecile and Professor Kaufman also were supposed to sit at their table. The professor's absence stared back to all of us. It was not hard to notice. After a while, Cecile appeared out of the kitchen with a sigh, a forced indifference, and a cart full of breakfast. Hey, Joseph, is this what you ordered, right? A cheese omelette with ketchup on the side? Joseph took a deep breath. He was concentrating on a broken toy passenger train in his hands. Yeah, that's fine. Cecile placed a dish in front of him. And you, Celine? Sorry that your toast ended up a bit burnt. Is this all right? Celine looked up from her notepad. Uh-huh, that looks fine to me. Cecile placed a dish in front of her. He then eventually placed the rest of our dishes in front of all of us. A heavy silence filled the room. Most of us picked of our food except for little Friedrich, Cecile, and Anastasia Constantina. Friedrich, realizing that nobody was in the mood to remind him about his table manners, started digging in. Cecile and Anastasia Constantina, meanwhile, were left staring at the dishes. Anastasia, please, you need to eat. I'll be happy even if you start taking small bites. The little Russian glanced at Emilia, then at her food, then took a bite and chewed slowly. Okay. Shy grins grew on each other's faces as they continued grasping each other's hand in comfort. After breakfast, Dr. Adinar gathered everybody up in the lobby. Emergency meeting. The doctor seemed to have calmed down, but judging by his face, his calmness wasn't a good sign either. He began with a shaky voice. Thank you for meeting today. As you might have seen, our distinguished guest is no longer with us. I'm not done with my autopsy yet, but I'm confident he was murdered. However... He hesitated, coughed, then continued. However, I do not wish to alarm everybody, but there's a murderer among us. As you may have suspected, it is possible that one of us have murdered Professor Kaufman. Although a sound reason, I prefer not to believe it. But I could not rule out the possibility that one of us is the murderer. And I also could not rule out the possibility that there would be any further murders. Well, if that's the case, there shouldn't be any worry, right? Well, we might as well just call the police right now and have them take care of everything. The doctor dabbed away his sweat. Well, that's the issue. If we can get in contact with the police. And I mean, if. What do you mean, if? Call them right now. The phone lines were cut. The telegraph lines, too. Joseph gave out a chuckle, then his expression slackened. The doctor was serious. Dr. Adenar swallowed and turned to the windows. There are 120 centimeters of snow outside. Because the phone lines are cut, and we are all snowed in, and it would take miles to reach the closest town, I say the best we can do is wait to die. And wait to die more. And wait while the possibility of a serial murder looms behind our backs, stabbing us in the back. I shivered. I heard murmurs around me. But! The doctor cleared his throat, forcing a smile, showing his nervous optimism. But that is only the worst-case scenario. Perhaps the murderer might not be any of us. Perhaps the murderer wished to delay any reporting of Leon's murder until the snow has melted, and that is why he cut the phone lines. Perhaps he had killed Herr Professor and escaped before the snowstorm began at 8:30 p.m. last night, and I most definitely prefer this reason. However, he let go of his smile. I have the responsibility of ensuring everybody's safety, which is why you die first. Therefore, I am not allowed to let myself off the possibility that one of us is the culprit, might be me. But enough of that. What is important is I need everybody to listen and follow my instructions. And he's the murderer. Afterwards, the doctor launched into an explanation as to what was going to happen. First off, I wish to have everybody know that we have a sled. Joseph's eyes lit up. So, we don't have a way to escape? Yes, we do, but how should I put it? Sister Juliet, you are the only person who have ridden the sled, right? How big is it? Sister Juliet blinked. For your information, I do not ride it. That sled is for transporting dead bodies only. Wait, what? Bodies? You meant to say you used a sled to transport bodies? Only when there's snow outside, Augustine, and only if the morgue is full. Hey, don't look at me like that. Listen, it's not as if a body could ever complain. Wow, since when did nuns start becoming so cynical? Just then, Sister Justine broke into the conversation. Sister Juliet, that is enough. You should not have made our news guest worry. Tch. Oh, but wait. If that sled is used to transport bodies. Sister Juliet, how many bodies can fit in that sled? Sister Juliet narrowed her eyes at my question. I was getting around to that. 1 body per sled. What? Just 1? Why are you surprised? So far we were forced to use the sled only once. I mean, yes, but that means we only have 1 sled. Only 1? For 1 person? Dr. Adenero scratched his scalp. Yes. Now you see our little problem here? There's only 1 sled in one of the basement storage rooms, and this sled is suitable for 1 person. Which is why I'm going to be the one using it. Joseph tilted his head. But there shouldn't be an issue if we only have 1 sled, and if 1 person uses it, right? Why not nominate whoever is the least suspicious to leave and get in touch with the police? And what if we, by accident, elect the murderer? Then we will die. Oh. Dr. Adenauer nodded and dabbed the sweat off his face. Oh, so that was it. Dr. Adenauer wanted to prevent the murderer from fleeing. Sister Juliet? Sister Justine? Do you have the only keys to the hallway which leads to the sled storage room? Yes? Yeah, what do you need it for? Would you please be so kind to lend those keys to me? Because I'm the murderer. Thank you. He pocketed the keys in his trousers and turned to everybody else. I forbid the usage of the sled, for I do not wish to have the murderer escape. Until the snow has melted, we shall all stay put. Just then, Cecil stepped in front of the doctor. But that's ridiculous. You are putting all of us in danger. Are you just going to let more of us die? But the doctor did not budge. I'm not willing to listen to any more vexatious questions. Either you follow my instructions or I'll withhold your upcoming treatment. Despite his height, Cecil shrank from the doctor's threat. Now that I have the only keys to the sled, I can showcase what I was able to find from my autopsy so far. Judging by my amateur estimate, I can conclude that Herr Professor Kaufmann departed last night around 8 p.m., give or take 1 hour. Therefore, any time between 7 and 9 p.m. may possibly be the professor's time of departure. Now, as you people are aware, the snowstorm began around 8:30 p.m. Which means Herr Kaufmann's departed while the Walpurgisnacht party was still going on. Now, I know the party began at 6 p.m. However, I left to do some work in my office around 7 p.m. Thus, it would be a great pleasure for me if one of you could give a brief overview as to what happened in the party after I left. Silence. Emilia sighed and raised her hand. I can give an overview here, Doctor. I was the most sober patient during the party. I had only 2 sips of wine. And I also stayed at the music saloon the entire time. Celine, Anastasia, Joseph, and Augustine can vouch for me. Wait, I can? But Emilia was right. At that moment, my memories of the party started clicking together, forming a narrative. I finally remembered Celine's chemicals. What? I finally remembered that Emilia, Anastasia, Constantina, Celine, Joseph, and I were all together, drinking wine, playing truth or dare, and saying said... Oh. I finally remembered Joseph decided to play the piano as I left Anastasia, Constantina's... Yeah. I don't trust you, Emilia. After all, weren't you the one who went so far gone as to confess that you're... I don't recall such a thing, Celine. And not believe a yellow journalist could ever report their memories in an accurate manner either. Liar. I most definitely remember that scene. The nuns had to force Emilia's cup out of her hand after she went deep into her opinions on Catholic and Eastern Orthodox theology. Emilia was calling for the merging of the 2 churches. Very well, but once I start seeing major holes in your testimony, I will suspect you. Thank you here, Doctor. Now let me express what I believe happened last night. She then faced the rest of us. If any of you disagree with what I witnessed, please correct me. First off, the Walpurgisnacht party began at 6 p.m. right after we had dinner. Is that right, Sister Justine and Cecil? Why are you asking me? That's because you and Sister Justine prepared dinner last night, and I most definitely remember it was your cooking. No wonder you are the breadwinner of your family. Hey, my family loves my food. How could they love me if they hate what I cook? Unless you count setting the dishes and cleaning the pots as cooking. I fail to see how in any particular way you can be a chef. Okay, well, I had an off day yesterday. But tell me it's a holiday today, and I'll try my best to fix up a feast. Cecil, yesterday was Walpurgisnacht. It was a holiday. Ugh. But thank you for letting me know all that. At least I was able to determine that you and Sister Justine cooked yesterday's dinner. Why are you treating me as if I was hiding information? Anyway, moving on. Now, the party last night, I know for a fact that it started at 6 p.m. sharp. I know that within the first hour all of us start drinking, not only little Friedrich and Herr Kaufmann. In fact, I believe that little Friedrich was the first patient to leave the party. That's right, Sister Justine. And am I correct, little Friedrich? Little Friedrich, with confused eyes, glanced at Sister Justine, motioning her to give the answer instead. Yes, little Friedrich left the party early. He asked if he could go play the train set in the basement. I said yes, and he ran off. Did you follow him to see if he went to the basement? Why would I? I believe he knows his way down there. That is not what I mean. I'm only wondering if you kept eyes on him while he was down there. Oh. Well, I did, but that was right after the party was over. Sister Juliet and I left the party early and stayed in the library for most of the night. After the party was over, we both found him sleeping on the ground, his body crushing his toy. And what was that toy? Oh, it was just his model passenger train. Mr. Roosevelt, did you find enough parts for the train? Joseph snapped himself out of his trance. Huh? Oh yeah, I haven't started fixing his train yet. I'll let you know if I need anything. I glanced at little Frederick to see if he had anything else to say. But he continued staring off into space, lost in his daydream. He was not familiar with our words. Good to know. Now then, what happened after you met with little Frederick? Well, I tried pulling him up, but I strained my shoulder. While he was asleep? Yes, that was a mistake I made. Sister Juliet ended up waking him up. I wondered how Sister Juliet came up with that solution. It was no secret. I went to the ground floor to fetch a pail of water. I threw the water on his face. We scrambled little Frederick back to his chalet and locked his door. When he got back to the sanatorium, the clock said 1:20 a.m. So it was that late. Yes. By the way, the chalet, if you don't know, was a Swiss cottage which neighbored the sanatorium, built as a solution to prevent Friedrich Walderstein from escaping. After Frederick heard the death of his parents, he made many attempts to escape until his family gave the sanatorium money to build a cage for him as a Swiss chalet. Thought I should mention this, Improv. Thank you very much for that information, Improv. Just then the doctor interrupted. So little Frederick was unsupervised for more than 6 hours. That is most definitely suspicious. But Emilia ignored the doctor and moved on. Now let's continue. The second person who left the party was Herr Professor Kaufmann himself. I believe Herr Kaufmann left around 6:30. Correct, it told me he wanted to continue a paper he had been writing recently. And after the professor left, Dr. Adenier left 30 minutes later. Yes, I left around 7 p.m. I had some paperwork to attend to. Silence. Do you have anything more to say, Herr Doctor? No, nothing. Carry on with your testimony. Thank you, Herr Doctor. Anyway, let us get back to when each person left the room. If I recall correctly, the third person to leave the room was Cecil. He left only for a while. I remember that Cecil left the room and returned 20 minutes later with firewood. Is that right, Cecil? What's wrong with me picking firewood? There's nothing wrong with that. I just wish to verify my memory's correct. Well, yes, so what? Dr. Ediner asked Sister Justine to remind Sister Juliet to pick some firewood, and Sister Juliet instead asked me to go pick them. I had, as to where I'd gotten them from, there was a pile of wood near the tool shed. Once I arrived here, I placed the wood at the fireplace, and you guys here all lit it up. Actually, I remember it was Augustine who lit up the fireplace. Augustine, is my memory correct? Maybe, yeah. It also suggested that I do the honors of lighting up since yesterday was my first holiday spent in the sanatorium. But, hold on, there was something I had noticed was strange. Before I lit the fireplace up, Cecil noticed there was snow in it. Sister Juliet and Sister Justine then argued with each other over whether it is possible for snow or rain to fall into the chimney, especially if one is covered with a chimney cap. It was then that Joseph suggested that I should ignore the nurses and light the fireplace up. Thank you, Augustine. Yeah, I do remember that commotion as well. As to what I think about the chimney in the music saloon. Anastasia, do you remember if you saw a chimney cap during your lectures at the professor's office? After all, his office does give quite a view of the roof. Anastasia Constantina pondered over the question. Then she lit up. I think so. I believe the chimneys here all have caps. But you can only see the music saloon's chimney if you look up from the window behind the professor's desk. So it was not something I saw during every lecture. I believe Cecil also agrees with me. Right, Cecil? Oh, right. I remember there was a chimney cap. It was not something I would have paid any attention to, but I did remember something laid out on the music saloon's chimney. Thank you, Anastasia and Cecil. I'll keep that as a note. Now, moving on. She turned to Dr. Ardinier. This means that once Augustine lit up the fireplace, Anastasia, Celine, Augustine, Cecil, Joseph, Sister Justine, Sister Juliet, and I were all around in front of it. So, Dr. Ardinier, does this help confirm our alibis during this time? The doctor scratched his head. Then, narrowing his eyes, he spoke with an irritated throat. I cannot accept this. Cecil was gone from the room for 20 minutes. He was gone from 7 to 7:20. The air before the company should have departed between 7 and 9. What do you have to say for yourself, Cecil? I told you already, I was gathering wood for the fireplace. Even then, this blank span of time suggests you as the most suspicious individual here. But let us continue and see if we can find a better suspect. But carry on, Miss Balsamo. I said carry on. My apologies here, Doctor. I was still pondering over what Cecil had just said. Anyway, the next two people who left the party were the twin nurses, Sister Justine and Sister Juliet. May you two correct me? Yes, that is correct. Sister Juliet and I left the room. We were trying to avoid getting drunk. What Sister Juliet said was half true. I was bored of your game, so we went to the library and played Go Fish. And neither of you left the library for the rest of the night? Yes, ma'am, that is right. Yeah, that seems correct. Are you sure? What do you mean? Why would I not be sure? Because Sister Justine said she left the library with you after the party is over. Sister Juliet clicked her tongue. You already know what I mean. Neither Sister Justine nor I stayed in the library during the entirety of the night. What I really mean is that we stayed in the library for the rest of the party. After the party, you woke little Frederick up and sent him directly home, yes? To the Charlotte, I don't know how to pronounce that. Where else? Again, we also locked his door. Again, we got to the sanatorium and locked and said 1:20 a.m. Do you need me to repeat anything else, Madame Balsamo? I suggest you have some Earl Grey tea so that the caffeine could help you memorize my words better. If you weren't annoyed by my repeated questions, I would say please do. But personally, I believe you need the tea more than I do. Perhaps you should have it iced so you can cool yourself down. But anyway, moving on. After the nurses left, the rest of us, that is Augustine, Anastasia, Celine, Joseph, Cecil, and I, continued partying. We all were playing Truth or Dare. Hold on, Emilia. Didn't we do something else beforehand? Like drinking wine and taking stuff? Yes, how could I forget that? The next person to leave the party was Cecil. That's not what I said. Cecil faced all of us. He sighed. He probably realized he was the most suspicious person here. How could he not be? He pondered how to carefully say his words and took a deep breath. You might not believe me, but the reason I left the party was because I was stuck with inspiration. I injected some of Celine's... and this gave me the motivation to wrap up my epic poem. Just then, Doctor butted in. Of course one of our patients here has a drug mania. No motivation is needed for murder in that case. Wait, I can explain. The rest of the partygoers also took chemicals. Augustine, Anastasia, Celine, Joseph, Emilia, they all did too. I just participated in the fun. Cecil's lying. I was wide awake. Aside from the wine, none of us here took any chemicals from Celine. Cecil personally requested a bottle from Celine. Yeah, I can vouch for that. Cecil did ask... Cecil's mouth went dry. Anastasia, you remember, right? I was the only patient who took chemicals, right? Okay, think. With all due respect, Cecil, I was hardly aware of my senses. Perhaps I was long gone from the drinking. So I'm not sure if you were the only patient who took Celine's chemicals or not. Please forgive me. Cecil then turned to me. Augustine, you remember, right? You agree with me that I wasn't the only one to chemicals, right? Please remember. I felt Emilia's eyes glaring straight at me. For some reason, I understood. Emilia was trying to convince Dr. Adinair that her testimony was the most accurate. If she had taken Celine's chemicals, this might have meant losing the doctor's trust and the testimony's accuracy. But why lie, Emilia? Why did you volunteer to give your testimony in the first place? Could there be an ulterior motive behind you giving your testimony? Yet for some reason I ended up trusting her. But us, the players, do not. Unless you do. Sorry, Cecil, I think you were the only one who took Celine's chemicals. So that's it, then, right? I understand you guys must be right, I must be face the doctor. Yes, sir, doctor, I was the only patient who took chemicals. Please believe me, I do not have a drug mania. I just needed some inspiration to finish my poem, that's all. How could I find the time and mood to write if I committed a murder beforehand? I believe you made a good point. However, that is not enough to convince me. Oh, really? That's it then? Is there any way for me to convince you that I am not the murderer? How about I tell you who I suspect? Would that help? That would not reduce my suspicion of you. But please, convince me. Well, in that case, the person who I suspect the most in murdering Harry Kaufman is... Cecil flayed his right arm as he pointed his finger at... You! Me? Yes. Yes, you. Don't pretend you didn't see me. You, Augustine, I'm talking to you. Why, I've been quiet for most of the time. I know Anastasia for a while now, and I know Emilia through her. I know Celine through Emilia for a couple of months now, and I know Joseph through Friedrich a while ago. But you, Augustine? I sure do not know anything about you. None of us do. Which is why I suspect you. Well, Cecil had a perfect reason to suspect me. It was true. I preferred keeping my distance from everyone, and yet I was unwilling to reveal my reason. That's because... I've gotten to know a lot of you guys, but I haven't got the chance to wholly introduce myself, at least not yet. Cecil chuckled at my explanation, faced the others. Well, that statement alone certainly makes Augustine even more suspicious. He is a newcomer with no friends here, a stranger with no attachment to us. Perhaps he came here to kill Herr Kaufmann. Perhaps he came to kill us all. That is enough. Oh, it was Princess Anastasia Constantina. Mr. Cecil, wrote Smith. Suspecting someone of the murder just because he is quiet is a truly despicable accusation. I will never forget the people who condemned Papa just because my mother... Cecil backed away from me and approached the shivering Russian. I am sorry for reminding you of your father. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my groundless judgment. He turned to me. Sorry, Augustine, I got carried away there. In all honesty, I don't think you are a bad kid. Am I a kid? Hopefully you can forgive me. He patted me on the back. I returned a smile back. No worries, Cecil. The truth was, I was very worried. The reason why I avoided talking about myself was I was afraid they might uncover my past, uncover who I really was as a person. I wanted to leave France and Algeria. I wanted to leave my family and hometown. I could even consider my tuberculosis a blessing, which is why I felt hesitant in confessing to everybody, even after a murder. I would rather die than go through all of that again. Thank you, Cecil, for your very valuable insight on Augustine. I'm sure that this will be very useful in the near future. Anyway, let us continue, everyone. From 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. after Cecil left the music saloon to work on his poem, the rest of us, that is Anastasia, Celine, Augustine, Joseph, and I, were left in the party. I believe we're all in our rooms by 1 a.m. Is that right, everyone? Each of us remaining partygoers pondered over a question for a bit. Yeah, no qualms with that. I wasn't sober, but it did feel like 1 a.m. at least. I agree with Celine. I think I tucked myself in by 1 a.m. I don't see anything wrong with that. I guess I started snoozing way before that. And Augustine, what about you? I'm not sure, but it sounds about right. Seems like the rest of the party goes at, and I read. I returned to our rooms by 1 a.m. the previous night. And as you know, after that, the nurses left the library to wake little Frederick up and sent him home. The nurses arrived back at the Sanatorium at 1:20 a.m. And I believe, Herr Doctor, that it was the end of the party last night. And as for me, yes, I was in my bedroom a little before 3 a.m. So is that all, Miss Balsamo? Yes, that is all I can remember, Herr Doctor. Shall I wrap all the testimonies up and start from the beginning of the party last night? Go ahead, Herr Doctor. Alright. So that was Bildungsroman, Murders in the Sanatorium by Improv. So the overall fun. We did not get to the actual game, but it takes a really, really long time to get there. I went through this game for almost a whole hour, and we still haven't gotten to that point yet, but we were getting close-ish. So overall fun, I can't really say much, except if we focus on more like the story we know of. So we don't know enough to really know who might be the murderer. We only made one choice, which I should have saved before making, but I forgot. But story would be something that I could get back to later, either in a future video or just off-cam gameplay. So I'll just put this right now as a 2, but if I could just get to actual gameplay, arts and graphics, just a random thought is that Anastasia's forehead just looks big, but that does not matter at all. The backgrounds, I think the backgrounds would be the problem when it comes to art. Some of them just look strange or a little too blurred out, like they took an image and then edited it, and then the edits is what made it look weird like that. But it did have a big contrary to the characters, which had a interesting effect of popping the characters forward and the background backward. So I'll put that as a 3. Controls UI, very simple, very easy. I did not have any problems with it. Put that as a 4. And the UI, also the UI just fits with everything and looks good. Sound and music. I really like that door sound in the intro, the story. There wasn't too many sounds like most VNs, but I liked the music. So because of that one sound in the beginning, some of the sounds, they paid attention to panning to what side of the headphones the audio plays, so 4 for me. If you guys have enjoyed this video, Bildungsroman, Murders the Sanatorium by Improv, then do consider leaving a like and subscribing. Comment below what you thought of this game and what you thought of this video, and share this video with your friends so they enjoy it as well. If you want to try out this game for yourselves, the links to both the game and to the feedback quest down in the description below, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.